My ex-wife drained my savings account while I was laying in the ICU after a car accident. I can't believe I ever married you, the text said. I replied with a single K. When I walked out of the hospital, I bought a new house and never looked back. I woke up in the ICU, my body shattered with pain, but nothing compared to the message I saw on my phone. I can't believe I ever married you. My wife, Emma, had drained our savings account while I fought for my life. Before all of this, I thought I had everything I wanted: a solid job, a house, and a wife who seemed perfect. At least, that's what I told myself. Emma and I met years ago in college when I was still trying to figure out what I wanted from life. She was confident, ambitious, and completely captivating. We hit it off immediately. The chemistry was undeniable, and it felt like we were meant to be. We married soon after, convinced we were building something lasting. We bought a house, settled into our routine, and even talked about kids, a future together. I worked hard to provide for us both, putting in long hours at the office, always thinking about how lucky I was to have someone like Emma by my side. She supported me, or at least I thought she did. At first, things were great. We'd laugh over dinner, plan weekend trips, and dream about the life we'd build. But then something changed. Slowly, I started to notice her pulling away. She'd spend more time out with friends and less time at home. Our conversations became sparse, and when we did talk, it felt like we were just going through the motions. I didn't want to believe it at first. I told myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe work was stressing her out, or maybe I was just too caught up in my own routine to notice the cracks. I tried everything I could think of to reconnect. I'd plan romantic nights out, make little gestures, but it was like she wasn't even there anymore. Her responses were always distant, and eventually she stopped pretending. There were no more late-night talks, no more affectionate touches, just emptiness. And yet, despite all the signs, I convinced myself that it wasn't as bad as it seemed. Maybe we were just going through a rough patch, right? Maybe things would get better. But I was fooling myself. The truth is, I wasn't the one who mattered anymore. She had already made up her mind about what she wanted, without me. Now, lying in this sterile hospital bed, unable to do anything, I couldn't help but wonder how I missed all the signs. She'd been slipping away for months, and I didn't see it coming. What hurt more than the physical pain was knowing that the woman I'd trusted, who I thought would be there through thick and thin, had already checked out long before I even realized it. Then, when I saw that text, everything fell into place. It wasn't just that she had left me, it was how she did it. With the coldness of an email, draining our savings account while I was lying unconscious in a hospital bed, as if I didn't even deserve an explanation. It felt like she was waiting for me to die so she could be free of me. And in that moment, I realized just how little I meant to her. The moment the message hit me, I couldn't breathe. It was like I was suffocating, and it wasn't from the pain in my body, but from the realization that everything I had known, everything I had worked for, was a lie. Emma, the woman I thought I was building a life with, had destroyed it all while I was fighting for my life. She wasn't just physically absent, she was emotionally gone, and now she had taken everything. I wanted to scream, but the oxygen mask over my face stifled the sound. My mind raced, thoughts colliding in every direction. How could she do this? How did I not see it coming? It was like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into a deep, dark abyss, and the fall was inevitable. In that moment, I felt the weight of her absence more than I ever had before. I wasn't angry yet. That would come later. I was too numb to be angry. All I felt was a cold, sinking realization. She had taken our life together, the one I had fought so hard to build, and destroyed it without a second thought. She had drained everything. I glanced at my phone again. The message was still there, sitting like a betrayal in my inbox. I couldn't stop thinking about how cold and calculated it seemed. I can't believe I ever married you. That was the line that kept replaying in my head. It wasn't just a simple goodbye or I'm sorry. No, it was as if she was trying to make me feel small, worthless, as if she had decided I wasn't even worthy of an explanation. I tried to call her. My fingers trembled as I dialed her number, but the call went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again, each time the same result, her voice saying, "I'm sorry, but I can't take your call right now." It was like she was deliberately avoiding me, like she was pretending I didn't even exist. I wanted to scream at the phone, tell her how much she was destroying me, but all that came out was a soft, defeated sigh. The irony of it all didn't escape me either. Here I was, stuck in a hospital bed, unable to move, unable to fight back, while she was free, out there living her life, doing whatever she wanted, without a care for what was happening to me. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that I still loved her. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, I still loved her. I wanted to believe that maybe she was making a mistake, that maybe this was just temporary. Maybe if I could just get out of this hospital, we could fix things. Maybe if I showed her I could be better, she'd come back. But deep down, I knew it was over. I knew she had made up her mind long before I ever ended up here, in this hospital room, alone. I hated feeling like this, vulnerable, weak, like I had no control over my own life. It was like the world had spun out of control, and I was just a passenger, helpless, watching it all unfold. I wanted to yell at her, tell her that I had done everything for us, that I had given her everything I had, but no words came. Instead, I was left with a single word. K. I typed it out without even thinking. I didn't care about a response. I didn't need to beg or plead. I was done. But even as I hit send, I knew it wasn't over. It wouldn't be. It was just the beginning of something much darker, something that I wasn't sure I was ready for. The truth was, I had no idea how much she had taken from me, how much I had lost in that one moment. But I would find out soon enough. It took me days to really process what had happened. My body was still recovering, the pain was still fresh, and I was trapped in a hospital bed, helpless and unable to do anything about it. The anger came next, the frustration, the overwhelming sense of betrayal. But then something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let her take everything from me. I wasn't going to let this define who I was. As I lay there, staring at the sterile white ceiling, I thought about all the things Emma and I had built together. The house, the vacations, the dreams. It felt like a lifetime ago that we were happy. And now, in the span of a few hours, she had destroyed it all. But I wasn't going to let her win. I knew that if I let this break me, if I let her betrayal define me, then I would lose everything. Not just her, but my dignity, my sense of self-worth, and my future. I couldn't let that happen. I had spent too many years putting her first, too many years working towards a future that we both were supposed to share. But it was clear now that I was on my own. The next few days felt like an eternity. The hospital staff came and went, checking on me, making small talk, but I barely listened. My mind was elsewhere, consumed by the mess I was now in. I couldn't focus on my recovery, not yet. My thoughts kept circling back to what Emma had done. But with every passing moment, something else began to grow inside me, a quiet, burning resolve. I wasn't going to stay down, not this time. I started making calls. The first one was to a lawyer, a divorce lawyer. I knew the divorce was inevitable, but I wanted to be prepared. I needed to protect myself. I couldn't let her just take everything. It wasn't just the money. It was the principle. She had robbed me of everything while I lay in a hospital bed, unable to defend myself. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my dignity, too. The lawyer told me the next steps. He was efficient, and even though I couldn't see him face to face, I felt a little more in control with each word he spoke. He explained the process, asked about our finances, and discussed the next steps for handling the divorce. But even with all the legal steps ahead, I knew there was more I had to do. I couldn't just sit back and let her have the upper hand. I needed a fresh start. I didn't want to go back to the life we had. The house, the memories, everything that once felt familiar. It all felt like a trap now. I couldn't be in that place anymore, not after everything she had done. I made up my mind right there in that hospital bed. As soon as I was able to leave, I was going to buy a new house, a fresh start, a place where I could heal and rebuild. I wasn't going to let her define my future. I started researching properties from my phone, my new sanctuary, a place that would be mine, a place where I could finally breathe again. It wasn't just about a new house. It was about reclaiming my life. I needed space, privacy, something that could remind me that I was more than just the man she had left behind. It had been weeks since the accident, but I was already thinking about the next chapter, about making sure that I was the one in control of my life. Then came the decision that would change everything. I knew I couldn't stay in my old town. Too many memories, too many places that reminded me of Emma. I decided to move, far away from everything. I didn't care where. I just needed to get away, to clear my head and find out who I was, without her, without the life we once shared. I wasn't angry anymore. I had passed the point of rage. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about hurting her. It was about moving forward. My life was mine again, and I was going to make sure it meant something. I wasn't going to spend another minute drowning in the past. I was going to make something better of myself, something she could never take away. I didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a future worth fighting for. And I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. Emma had taken what she could from me, but she hadn't taken me. I was still here, and that was enough. I was ready to leave the hospital, ready to leave everything behind and start again. For the first time, I was doing it for myself. The recovery wasn't just physical anymore, it was emotional, mental, and I was more than ready to face it. This was my turning point. The days that followed my decision to leave the past behind were a blur. I left the hospital with a new sense of determination, though my body still ached from the injuries. But nothing hurt more than the idea of returning to that life with Emma, of staying in the house that had once felt like a home, a place where dreams were supposed to grow, but had turned into a prison of memories and deceit. I didn't waste any time. I moved quickly, securing a new place in a city miles away. It was a fresh start, but it felt like it was more than just a change of scenery. I was stepping into a new chapter of my life. I'd found a house that was nothing like the one I'd shared with Emma. It was mine, mine to shape, mine to fill with my own future. The day I signed the papers for my new home, I couldn't help but feel the weight of everything that had happened. The betrayal, the hurt, and the anger were still there, but they were beginning to fade in the presence of something stronger: hope. I spent weeks settling in, building a life that was entirely my own. I threw out the remnants of the old life, anything that reminded me of Emma, anything that could trigger the memories of how she had taken it all away. The furniture, the pictures, everything that had once symbolized us was gone. I didn't need those things to move forward. They were just physical reminders of a life that didn't exist anymore. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting another spam call or an unimportant message. But it was Emma. She'd reached out. She had the nerve to ask if we could meet up. My blood ran cold as I read her words. "I've made a mistake. I miss you. Can we talk? I'm sorry for everything." Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep moving forward and leave her in the past. But another part of me, one I wasn't proud of, still held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, she had changed. But as I sat there staring at the message, something inside me clicked. I had spent so long chasing something that wasn't real, begging for validation from someone who had already decided who I was to her. I didn't want to fall into that trap again. I didn't respond right away. I took a deep breath and let the silence settle around me. And then I typed out a response, one that was simple, straightforward, and final. "I can't hear you over the sound of my private jet taking off. You made your choice." It wasn't about being petty. It wasn't about trying to get back at her. It was about realizing that I didn't need her to complete me. I was whole on my own. I had rebuilt my life, my real life, and I wasn't going to let her ruin it. She had made her choices, and so had I. I didn't owe her anything anymore. It was the most freeing feeling I'd ever experienced. I remember putting my phone down after sending that message and looking out the window of my new home, feeling a weight lift off my chest. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city. In that moment, I realized I didn't need to hold on to the past anymore. I didn't need to keep looking back. The future was mine to create, and this was only the beginning. When she tried to reach out again a few weeks later, I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I didn't have to explain myself. I had finally found peace, and it was something I had built on my own. I didn't need her to apologize. I didn't need her to come crawling back. I didn't need anyone's validation. I had proven to myself that I could stand on my own. I had walked away from the wreckage of my past, and I had rebuilt something better. The life I was building now was real, rooted in the strength I had discovered within myself. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. It was more than I could have ever hoped for. And no one, no matter how much they'd hurt me, could ever take that away. This was my moment, my freedom, and no one could ever take that from me again. As I settled into my new life, a part of me couldn't help but look back, even though I knew I needed to leave the past behind. The pain from Emma's betrayal was still there, but it had faded into something I could handle. It was no longer the thing that consumed me. It was just a chapter of my story, one I had no intention of letting define me. I spent the first few weeks in my new home just being. I took long walks in the evenings, explored my new city, and started to do the things I had forgotten I loved. I focused on my health, my career, and my personal growth. I began rediscovering parts of myself I had neglected for far too long. The long hours at work, the constant stress of trying to please someone who could never be satisfied. It all felt so distant now. I realized how much I had given up for someone else, and how little of myself I had left to give. But it wasn't all easy. Some nights I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. I thought about Emma, how she had once been my world, my partner. I remembered the good moments, the promises we made, and the dreams we shared. It was hard not to mourn those things. But I quickly learned that grieving what was lost was a necessary step in moving forward. What I had to accept was that I wasn't grieving the person I loved. I was grieving the life I thought we were going to build together. And once I accepted that, once I realized that the life I had imagined with her didn't actually exist, I was able to let go. The grief, the anger, and the disappointment all slowly transformed into something else, something much more powerful: empowerment. I had given Emma my trust, my heart, and my future. And she had taken it all without a second thought. But now I was learning to trust myself. I was learning to build a future that didn't depend on anyone else's approval or love. I realized that the only approval I needed was my own. The only person I had to love unconditionally was myself. In the months that followed, my life began to shift in ways I never could have imagined. My work became more fulfilling. I reconnected with old friends, and I met new people who saw me for who I truly was, someone capable of so much more than I had ever allowed myself to believe. I stopped living in the shadows of my past and started creating a future that was entirely my own. Emma's attempt to reach out, to apologize, didn't change anything. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I didn't need to fight or seek revenge. What I needed was to find peace, and I had. The biggest lesson I took from this was that we are all capable of so much more than we realize, especially when we stop relying on others to define our worth. For a long time, I thought my happiness depended on Emma, on her love, on her presence in my life. But the truth was, I was capable of finding happiness on my own. We often let our past define who we are, especially when we go through something traumatic, something that shakes us to the core. But the truth is, we define our own future. Our past doesn't have to be a burden. It can be a lesson, a stepping stone that guides us to a better place. The pain I felt from Emma's betrayal was something I could never forget, but it was no longer the thing that controlled my life. I controlled my life now. So, as I stand here today, in this house I built with my own 2 hands, surrounded by a future that I'm creating on my own terms, I realize just how far I've come. The man who once thought he needed someone else to complete him is now stronger and more independent than he's ever been. And as for Emma, I wish her nothing but the best. But I'm done looking back. The journey I've been on, the hardships I've faced, have all led me here, to this place of peace, self-respect, and the understanding that I am enough, just as I am. And in the end, that's all that truly matters. You don't need anyone to define your worth. You are the author of your own story, and it's up to you to decide how it unfolds. The pain of the past will always be there, but it no longer has a hold on me. I'm free now. And that freedom? It's worth more than anything I could have ever lost. I'm not the man I was when Emma left. I'm a better man now, a stronger man, a man who knows his worth and refuses to settle for anything less than what he deserves. And that's the greatest victory of all.